Okay, so let's start. So my name is Andre Walker. I'm going to talk about errors for humans. Slide's not going. Yes. I'm a developer at booking.com. I've been working there for about 3 years in beautiful Amsterdam. It's the office. It's a great place to work, and we're always hiring. Most of our code base is in Perl, so if you're interested, come talk to me afterwards. It's my favorite language, is the one that I know the most. I'll just wait for people to come in. Yeah, so I'm mostly a pro programmer. It pays the bills. But once in a while, I like to try other languages. There's a lot of nice ideas out there of different abstractions, different concepts. And I'm particularly fond of functional languages. So I like to play with those. So one of them is Elm. Elm calls itself a delightful language for reliable web apps. It looks a lot like Haskell. It's very similar to Haskell, with the exception that it's very beginner friendly. It has a lot of good documentation, a lot of good error messages. It tries to be very accessible. And I watched a few talks that the creator gave, creator of the language, Evan Czaplicki. And it kind of inspired me to think more about error messages, because yeah, that's one thing that they do very well. So here is one example. This is the entire program. It uses list.nap, which is obviously a mistake. So when you try to compile that, this is what you get. And this is, for me, the state of the art of error messages, right? It's my favorite, at least. You cannot find list nap. It adds a squiggly line saying this is the part where it's wrong. It's on line 4. List does not expose nap. Maybe you want one of the following, so it gives you the list. There's a lot of white space, so you don't have everything crammed together. The text breathes, so to speak. The colors are used to reinforce what's being said. So blue in the top, the red thing, and the rest white. There's not too much extra information other than what is actually required for you to understand what's going on. It suggests a solution, so maybe you want one of these. So overall, it looks like there went a lot of thought, like how will the user experience be for the user using the language. Another example, messed up if, and then you have this if. The mistake here is that Elm is a strongly typed language, so you can't use a string and a float. You have to return one thing from the if statement, one type. So this is the thing that you get when you compile it. The branches of this if produce different types of values. Then you have exactly the code that you wrote, not what the compiler interpreted and then tried to produce back what you wrote. No, it's exactly the same way you wrote, with the same indentation and everything. Yeah, then branch has string, the other branch has float. Hint, these need to match, so no matter which branch, you always get back the same type. So it's very clear what the compiler expected of your code and what is wrong with the code, what has to be fixed. And overall, languages have been getting better at this. Obvious example that I just showed, Elm, is a new language, and a lot of thought goes into this, but also Rust has a lot of focus in improving what they call ergonomics. And Perl 6 has been a lot of has to Perl 5. So let's look at, maybe you're all familiar with this. I got from a blog post by Suffix. So sub Levenstein, and you use the wrong Levenstein. Sorry, error while compiling, undeclared routine. Did you mean Levenstein? So this is pretty cool. If you run this with Perl 5, this is what you get. Empty output. Can anybody guess why? Yeah, no warnings. Yeah, no strict. So if you run this with warnings, you still, yeah, it shows you what's wrong. It doesn't suggest a solution. But it's also a bit confusing, right? Unquoted string Levenstein, that's because it's not strict, may clash with future reserved word. That's weird. Useless use of a constant in void context.
About evolution back then.
Yeah, fair enough. So the runaway quotes, if you run this with Perl 6, 2 terms in a row, runaway multi-line quotes starting at line 1 maybe. It shows you the piece of code that is broken, just like Elm, so that's pretty cool as well. Says what it was expecting and what it found instead. With Perl 5, again, it knows what's wrong, right? So might be a runaway multi-line string, but it also gives you a lot more information that you don't really need. Or, yeah, it's a little more confusing. So Perl 6 is already better in that regard. Maybe that's something we should steal back. And also, it says, do you need to pre-declare say? That's also something confusing. There's not too much white space. So yeah, I wish we would do better in this regard. Now, a personal tale. Something that I did inspired by this, so inspired by Elm particularly. I wanted to have something for the internal library that I worked on at Booking. And I wanted to show, well, I wanted to have good error messages, right? And I was comparing to Elm. And the nicest part would be to actually get the snippet of code that was wrong and show it on the screen and add a squiggly line. Of course, only Perl can parse Perl, but what if? What can we do, right? Is it really impossible to have this in Perl as well? So this is a class using this internal library that I work on. I won't go into too much detail because it's proprietary, so no secrets here, but the library is not open source, so it's not very interesting. But the thing is, the code has an error. So when you try to load this class, this is what you get. There's an error in the definition in this file for this endpoint, frobnicate. And the error is in dict. The details of the error, oh wait, I have arrows. So the error is here. So this is what was most fun to implement, right? To add the squiggly line below the actual error. But it's also not, maybe not the most important. It's kind of unrealistic to think that we can extend this to every kind of error in Perl, but at least this is as important and very easy to add. So you're using a type that requires parameters, but you haven't given any. For example, map is invalid, but map string to string is correct. So here, it should be dict something, right? So there's no parameters. You should use some parameters because the library expects that. How to fix this? Here is the documentation. So I'm giving you the proposed solution and pointing you to where the docs are. So this is one possible fix, right? So dict foo to int. This is what the library was expecting. So how did I do this? Particularly, how did I get this snippet of code and add the squiggly line? And you're probably thinking, please don't say regular expressions. I use regular expressions. And it made sense for the proof of concept at least. I didn't want to add a dependency to PPI. I didn't want to learn PPI actually. And regular expressions were easy to do. And it solved at least 95% of the cases. So how did I do this? First, I checked for the errors without actually parsing the code, right? So I checked the arguments. Do they make sense? Is there anything wrong? If there is something wrong, okay, now we have to get the code. So I get the caller, and that gives us the file and the line, but this line, right? So I want to get the entire snippet. Caller gives me the last line. Also, I want to show exactly what the user wrote and not what Perl understood of it. So that's also another reason why maybe regular expressions are good enough. So yeah, next step to find the beginning of the snippet I want to show. So here is what caller gave me. What I begin by doing is I delete in the file contents everything after this. Then I reverse the contents. I match everything I know about, because this is not a hash ref, so I have the order of the arguments. So I know there is a returns here, I know there is a version here, I know there is this string, and I know the function key. So I generate a regular expression and match until there. I get the pause, and I delete everything after that, and I reverse back. So now I have this snippet. Right. So this is what I have at this point. Now I know the errors. The error is in the key returns. I match that again with a regular expression. And so I find the position. I add a new line. I add a squiggly line below that. So yeah, it works. It's really hard to break in real life. For you to break my parsing, you can copy this and put, for example, in a comment here. Then, yeah, I would find the wrong thing, but you really have to try. So in real life, I never found anything. And even if it happens, whatever. I'm trying to be helpful.
As we say, it beats a kick in the head.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, this is a very contrived explanation of what I'm doing, but that's not the main point. The main point is it's actually possible to do in Perl. I don't know if it's possible to do it in scale, let's say for lots of libraries, to use this kind of thing. Maybe have some library that parses back whatever it was called. I don't know. So I'm open to ideas. But it was a proof of concept and was fun to write. And yeah. So review, what makes good error messages? Checking the input early in the call stack. That's important because if you don't, you kind of leak abstractions, leak what you're using internally, which is not exactly what you want. You want to say to the user, you're using this library, and I know that you made this mistake. So for example, if I delegated to type tiny to show the error, it would be much worse. Give enough information for the user to understand what happened. That's basically think about the user when using your library and give information that's relevant for him or her. Present possible solutions. That's generally easy to do because generally there's a certain amount of mistakes that are common, so probably it's one of those. If it's not, well, point to the documentation. That's easy to do, and write awesome error messages. That's it. Questions? Yes?
Can you go back to your code example? I'm not sure about where the error comes from. Does it come from the dict function, or is dict just a constant?
No, it doesn't.
It's detected in the get function.
it gets detected in the get function. Yes. Yes, I can repeat the question. So he was asking if the error comes from the dict function or constant, or it comes from the get. And I'm saying it comes from the get because if you just use dict, it's not very useful, but it won't give you a compile error. But for our usage, it's really useless if you don't give parameters. So we say this is a mistake. Here's how you fix it.
So, since you didn't want to depend on the PPI, so you use regular expressions, have you looked into PPR?
I have not. Yes. Sorry. The question was, I didn't want to add a dependency on PPI, but have I looked into PPR? And I have not. But yeah, I'm open to ideas. I slapped it together fairly quickly. It was easy, so I didn't research much, but might be good too. Yes.
One thing that was implicit in your examples, but you might want to make an explicit point is when you are sure versus when you are guessing. Be sure you indicate that clearly. We always put a question mark in when we're guessing.
Right. That's a fair point. Yeah. Cool.
One thing that
Oh, sorry. I have to repeat the question. Yes, I'm forgetting every time. So it was a remark that when I'm not sure of the error, I should add a question mark. When I'm guessing, I should say maybe this is the cause versus when I'm sure what the error is, which is kind of implicit in my example that I'm guessing. But I wasn't as clear that I'm guessing. So, yeah.
just a remark, one thing that I find incredibly helpful are error message numbers or maybe names for the error messages. That helps when Googling the same error.
Right, that makes sense. So the remark was that it's useful to add error codes or error names so that when you're Googling, it's easy to know what the error is. Yes?
You put a lot of time in inserting this squiggly line.
Yeah.
You also using color. Why not just make dict red instead?
Yeah. I repeat the question. Thanks. I put a lot of time adding the squiggly line. I could have colored dict instead. So my thought here was, what if you're colorblind? I think I actually tried coloring dict, and it's actually easier because I already know the position. Now I have to create a new line and add that position and add something below that. Adding the color is just adding the NC codes before and after. But if I'm just adding the color, then, well, if you're colorblind or if the terminal doesn't support colors or something like that.
The error is on a white space.
The error is on a white space. What do you mean?
Designation of important content in color is not accessible, period.
Yes.
If your terminal doesn't handle that, or if it's on white space, or the user cannot distinguish colors, it's completely inaccessible.
Right. So so repeating, relying only on colors is a bad idea. It's inaccessible. So
Redundancy is good for that.
yeah, redundancy is good for that.
We do use red and green in Perl 6 error messages, but we're very careful to put a bright yellow eject symbol, right?
Right.
It stands out even if you're colorblind.
Right. So Perl 6 also takes care of that using green and red, but also adding a yellow character in the point where the error happened. Okay. Anything else? Oh, yes?
I would add one thing to your list of principal errors, which is always return to all errors, not the first one you found.
Okay.
Because as an integrator, that is frustrating when you fix one thing and then you say, oh, there were all these other things that I also knew were wrong but I didn't tell you about.
Right. Yeah. That. So repeating the question, one of the principles that is useful to have is to list all the errors because it's frustrating to as an integrator to go over each one of them, compile again, and have new ones. So this is something that I didn't do for my library. So if you have multiple endpoints, I will show you all the errors I know about the first endpoint that broke, but the next ones I haven't parsed yet. So I don't keep collecting them and throw the error at the end. I just find out all the errors I get for the get function, and then I throw them all at once. But if you have another one in the next one, I don't. So that's probably an improvement point. But I also was a bit afraid of, I don't know, if you have 5 errors, you get like a huge thing because I'm printing a lot. So I don't know.
In Perl 6, we distinguish syntax errors from semantic errors. We try to list as many semantic errors as we can, but syntax errors usually means we do not understand the program from here on.
Okay.
So usually we fail out.
And then you stop. Yeah. So repeating for, the remark, Perl 6 solves this, separates semantic errors from syntax errors, and the syntax errors usually just bail out because you can't interpret anything from there on, and semantic errors then are collected and thrown all at the end. Okay, so thank you.